There are people throughout the world that have interesting stories to tell. Stories of heroism, acts of kindness, near-death experiences, successes, and failures. You usually hear of these stories from people that live in another state or country. But what about the stories from within your own community? Everyone has a story to tell. And by everyone, we mean your neighbor, your coworker, the person behind you at church, people you interact with on a daily basis, or maybe even you.
Welcome to the DTB Podcast, presented by the Bless Your Heart Nonprofit Corporation. I'm Brennan Mathern, and I'll be your host as we speak to some of the most interesting people on Bayou Lafourche. Over the first two seasons of our show, we've had plenty of interesting people, local officials, business owners, history buffs, people bringing awareness to social issues, and even members of a local band. One arena we have not entered into is sports. In this episode, we changed that with one of the most recognizable figures in sports in our area. Mike Detillier has become one of the most recognizable voices in sports in South Louisiana, especially college and pro football. For more than 3 decades, he produced an NFL draft report with scouting information on the top college football players in the country, an annual draft report even coveted by NFL teams. He was and still is a frequent guest on countless sports talk radio shows, not just locally, but around the country, most notably working with legendary WWL radio show host Buddy Diliberto. Following Buddy D's passing in 2005, Mike was part of the team created to try to fill those shoes, along with former New Orleans Saints quarterback and South Lafourche Tarpon Bobby Hebert. In 2006, Sports Illustrated named Mike the best new sports voice in America. He also makes frequent appearances on TV, including local Sports on the Bayou show on HTV. We know he loves to talk about sports, but today on our show, we want him to talk about something else, himself and his stories. We want the story behind the voice. Mike Detillier, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you, Brennan. I appreciate it. Yeah, makes me sound old at 3 decades. But every time I look in the mirror, I feel that way too. But yeah, it's great to be on, and yeah, it's been a great ride for me. If it ended tonight, I would have no bitch, none at all.
We ask every guest this, so we'll ask this, the famous Down the Bayou question. Who's your mom and dad? Tell us about you personally, your family, and just a little bit about where you went to school so people can get to know Mike Detillier and your background.
Yeah, I grew up in Matthews. My dad, Gerald, worked at Bollinger Shipyard 41 years. He was in World War II and I think started the start of Korean War. And got out, worked at the sugar house for a little while. Wasn't really crazy about that. And then he went work for the Bollinger Brothers, the original Bollinger Brothers. And so he worked there. My mom, Gladys, she worked at Barker's Gift Center for a while. Most of the time she was a homemaker, stayed at home, but she worked there. She liked working for Mr. Don and the group there, so able to go there. So, you know, Lockport, and as Babe said, you went to that school up north, Central Lafourche High School. So, you know, and I've lived here all my life. Now, you know, that I work at WWL last summer when I took the job full-time, because they had offered a number of other times, and I had turned it down. And then this time they came, they gave me a Godfather offer, so to speak. And so I decided to take it. And I said, what the hell? This is stealing money working with Hebert. Because I know I ain't going to have a lot of airtime if him and I work together. But, no, it's a crazy thing. I get asked all the time about how it is to live in New Orleans. And I'm like, well, I don't. I just work there. I drive back home to the bayou every day. And so no matter what happens in life for me, the bayou will always be a big part of my life growing up here. And I was telling you this, no matter what happens later on for me, I'm always going to have a home on the bayou. I might live kind of part-time somewhere else, but I always have a home here on the bayou. And I got 2 little grandkiddies, you know, and so I got to see them and teach them how to cut up. No, they know how to do that pretty good, yeah. Especially my little one who's 3 years old, Mia. And then I got Nora. She's not too bad. She's 8, but so we get to see them quite often. And you enjoy the grandkids.
We both have Nora Janes in our life.
We sure do.
That make our lives very interesting, don't they?
Yeah, and the different personalities, you see it. And my mom used to always say that about my brother and I, that totally different personalities. And I see it with Nora, and I see it with Mia. And sometimes I take a look at that 3-year-old little girl and say, "Oh my God, the genetics! I know where she get it from." Oh man, she's a big time cut up. But man, we love them both, and it's great to be close to them. Kim and Jordan live in Lockport, so it's a 5-10 minute drive to see them. And my oldest daughter, Steph, her and Clyde are in New Orleans, and proud of her too. She's vice president of World War II Museum. And I always knew that she would always used to play to be a teacher. And so then she kind of saw some of the things I was doing and decided she was going to be a journalist. And I told her, hey, listen, you better get another job like Pop did. Either that or you're going to starve. And so she was writing for a number of different magazines, doing journal stuff, and then got a chance to come back to Nichols and work for the president. And then Stephen gets the job when Mueller retired, and he called me up and he said, "You think Steph would be interested in coming and work at the World War II Museum?" Hey, you called the wrong Detillier. You got to give Steph that call, and she's decided to take it, and she's done really, really well. They're very proud of both of them.
Yeah, I had the honor of working with Steph when she was at Nichols, and it's great to see what she's doing at the World War II Museum.
And Stephen, he's so funny. He broke his hip. He was riding a bike. Okay, you ride down some of those streets, look like Beirut. I mean, the homes are beautiful, but the streets look like they've been bombed. And he caught one of these real huge pits, and he fell, breaks his hip, man, he hardly catches breath. So a couple of weeks later, he calls me up, "Michael, how are you?" Because Stephen's a Nichols guy, but he's from Scotland,
right? So
I always tell him he's trying to pass. To be a Cajun here, but if you listen to at first he opens his mouth, it's over with.
Tell.
He's like, "Michael, man, I survived. I did pretty good." He says, "But I wanted to tell you, Steph was 2 skipped heartbeats and a broken hip away from taking over."
Well, Mike, let's go back. I know we dated you a little bit with the 3 decades, but let's go back.
That's all right.
Let's go back to your start. You mentioned growing up here, and you got your professional start as well. You spent almost 3 decades at one of our institutions here, the Water District.
Yeah, 28 and a half years there. Got to work for Mr. Eldon Bro and Dirk Barrios. And both guys, just really good people to work for. Worked in the operations field. And, it was close to the house. I had other opportunities to go somewhere else. But, I sort of knew that this was right for me at the right time. And if I ever decided that I wanted to do radio or television full time, I always had that also. And so I was juggling, so those last 10 years were a major juggle of the ball. And then, you have health issues with your mom and dad, and I had them with both. And so when it came down to 2015, I'd had enough. It was time for me to leave. And, I enjoyed my time there. And you got to see how the environment around you is changing, how that fresh water coming down the bayou and then supplying it. But, you fighting so many different forces here. So it's almost like you're not part of the levee board, but you see it from a different level of how that water gets, how it's transported out, this and that, and water pressure, and you got some people. And we used to get these calls, "Oh, man, I don't have the water pressure at 3:30 in the morning that I have, at 1 o'clock in the afternoon." Well, no, honey. I get up to do my laundry at that time. Okay, I get it. And so, and you see everybody's kind of how they work and everything else with it. So, yeah, it was good for me.
if we go back even further, though, back in 1985, you started the draft report. And we, for many, many years you did that. I understand you not doing one anymore.
This year was the first year I had not done it since '85, and that was a lot of work.
And that's what I wanted to ask you about. I mean, if you've ever read this monstrosity of a draft report, this seems like no human should have this amount of knowledge on any one person, let alone an entire class of people every single year. So first of all, take us back to the beginning. Talk about how you got started. What made you get into that realm and publishing a draft report every year, and how it became so successful with that much knowledge about every player every year.
My mom was alive. She would say, you could have done this when you were 10 or 11 years old, that you could have done it back then. I'm not real sure about that, but, and so my interest was always there. And who really kind of pushed me hard to put it in book form was Don Landry. I give Don a lot of credit for this. Don was a former basketball coach at Nicholls State, athletic director. He left there to become the president of the Cutting Horse Association out in Texas. But Don had really pushed me about, man, stop just doing it on radio or doing a column. Put it in a book form. And he said, Mike, I'm telling you, you can sell. And so the first couple of years, we didn't sell a lot of them. And then the fire hit, so to speak. And then it became the NFL pushing back their schedule more and more, that, free agency got involved, and then they kept pushing it. And so it was the battle between me and the printers and mailing and everything else. And so, but it was always something I think in the back of my mind I wanted to do even when I was growing up, that I could do it, but it was to find the connects. But really, Don Landry had a tremendous amount to do with it. And I'll say this, Hap Glaude. Hap was the first real sports talk host in New Orleans. Maury McGill did it before Hap. Hap took it from like the 3 level to like the 8 level. And with Diliberto, he was off the 10 level. But Hap was a big pusher on that too, and he was like, "Man, I think you're right. I think you're right. Do it, and I'll get you on, and that sort of thing." And Hap and WWL was a big push for it. I will say that, tremendous amount. Other than Don Landry, it was Hap Glaude.
So how do you go from again just publishing this? I guess we'd love to hear the story about how this became such a huge success for you, and how it was distributed, and how people found out about it, and ultimately how this was your calling card for many years. Yeah,
it got my foot in the door, to be honest with you. And you go on WWL, that's a 50,000 watt flamethrower, and after 6 o'clock at night. At that time, this was before the internet and everything else, you on in 44 states. And you're like, wow. And I would get calls from scouts, general managers. Hey, you get a chance, send me a copy of that book. But don't send it to the place. Send it to my house. So they would never want it sent to the Saints camp or, say, Titans camp or Cowboys. It was always send it to my house because they don't want outside material. And so that's kind of how it started. I really couldn't tell you kind of when it hit for me big. I can tell you the first time, I couldn't tell you. The second time, Terry O'Neill gets fired from the Saints. Terry had been in the media all his life. Terry had been the vice president of CBS Sports. He ran CBS Sports. He ran NBC Sports. He was the head of ABC News. And him and Roone Arledge got into a little spat, and he didn't win. Roone did. And Roone ran ABC at that point. And so Mike Ditka hires Terry to be like vice president of the Saints. And he's basically doing the job what Dennis Lauscher's doing today. Terry gets fired with Mike. Terry goes to ESPN Radio full time. And so one Sunday he tells me, Mike, I think you've been through this before, but I need a favor. My wife wants to go eat out, and it's the same time I'm doing my show. Fill in for me. But don't, come on. I don't want to be Lou Gehrig here. And you got a chance to be Lou, so to speak. You could Wally Pipp me. So I was like, okay. And I went on. And that moment when we finished the show, Vince Cates is the producer, and he produced Colin Cowherd's show for ESPN, and now he's working for NFL Films, and we worked together there with Greg Cosell. And when I finished the show, he was like, "You coming on regular?" At that moment, I knew it. When that producer says that, I knew it. And this is 2000 at this point. So I've been doing it now for a few years, but it really caught a fire in that 2000 year, and that's when everything sort of blew.
Well, and I'll take you back 1 year prior, 1999. I'm an unassuming 19-year-old walking into my first radio job that summer. And, well, actually, no, this would have been 2002, 2000 as well. And 19 years old walking in here in La Rose at the Raging Cajun. Ken Friedlander, at the time, Jeff Boggs had just left. He and Ken had hosted the Sports Corner. I walk in and I start filling in for Jeff after he left as a producer. And at 19, I'm finding my way on the radio. And I remember one of my first duties that Saturday, and every Saturday, here's this little number, call Mike in this hour, the second hour of our show. And so every Saturday, got to give you a call, and we got to talk to you. And that was, like you said, it was right around that same time.
Yeah, it really did. It really hit. I remember that, and then I remember a few years later, Ken got Bobby and I on at the same time, and I knew damn well things weren't going to go well. and we sucked up the entire oxygen of an hour. And
one of the most memorable Raging Cajun Sports Corner shows.
And it was like, and I was telling you this before, it just popped in my mind that Bobby J's one of the few guys in this world who can ask a question, answer his own question, and then debate with himself before he can actually, the individual that he asked the question to has a chance to answer.
He's unique.
Yeah, to say the least. So Sean, Coach Payton, was like, Mike, I could not describe it better than that. That ask a question, answer it, debate himself. And a couple times during the coaches' shows on a Monday, and I get where he was going with it. And the first time he did it, Bobby just looked at me, what the hell is he talking about? He's like, Bobby, is this a debate session with you? And I'm like, no, I'm going to tell you what he means when we go to break. Okay. But, yeah. And so to think both of us, we have no training in this at all. We didn't go to school to be no journalists. Okay. Yeah. So we just sort of talking for how fans would talk. And Bobby was a player, me being a scout, and we look at it through the prism a little bit differently. Now, most of the time we agree, but we look at it a little bit different prism-wise. And so it's unique because of the fact that, one, he could really talk. And so can I. I mean, I got to admit that too, but he's talking from a player standpoint. When I was doing this with Hap Glaude and Bruce Miller and Buddy D, they didn't play the game at that level. Bobby did, and he's colorful.
So, to say the least, he's colorful. Someone had still put on, and I have forever now in my archives, the after the Saints won the Super Bowl, that whole show. I still have not listened to it all because I've got to listen to it in chunks because Bobby at that length, at that level, was a lot to take in at one time.
Yeah, he was. Because people always, I become the historian. And people ask me, your greatest moments in covering sports, and one of them wasn't necessarily winning the Super Bowl. it would be in the top 10, but number one for me, NFC Championship game, winning it, and Hartley kicks the field goal, and you go into the Super Bowl. And to see, the people who are a little bit older and had seen some of the 3-13 seasons, 3-10. I mean, it was so bad. And now you're at least getting there. So Marco Garcia, he's in the Saints Hall of Fame. He's the Spanish announcer. So he sees me and he says, come talk. And I'm like, man, I don't know about this. And so he said, just talk in English. All good. So, we spoke for a little while and everything else. So he takes the headphones off. He says, you think you can get Bobby to come here? I said, okay, hold on. Bobby at this time now, he was like a politician. He was going from person to person, shaking hands and everything. And Ronnie Lott was sitting next to us that day. And I could see Ronnie talking to him. And so I walked up to him. I said, listen, you got to come and do this spot. He says, who am I talking to? I said, a Spanish Saints Radio Network. He turned, he gave me a look. The what? I said, Mike, I don't know. Most people don't think I know how to talk English. I said, it doesn't matter. I said, listen, just go up there and talk. And he said about 2 sentences and broke down, cried like a baby. I had to calm him down because, I'm not kidding you. It was so emotional for him as a player and growing up here that, he sort of lost it at that point. And, it was so funny. He didn't want to go to the national championship game when LSU played against Clemson. And I think for the same reason, that I think he felt, here was a guy I went to high school with. He was my cousin. They were roommates at Northwestern, and he's got a chance to win the national championship. And I said, Bob, we got good seats. You just come sit with us, and everything's going to be cool. Man, I can't go, Mike. I can't go. I think part of that was he might have broke it again.
Yeah.
And this one might have been worse because of the connection with him and Bebe. And so it was one of the great moments. They win the national championship, and I get to see him just for a few minutes as they hustling him out, from the floor and all that. And we just exchanged a few words here and there. I'm driving back home, and ESPN calls me and said, listen, you got to come on. I said, okay. And so I'm doing ESPN radio. I'm driving, which I probably shouldn't be doing. Well, whatever. The statute of limitations didn't pass on that. So I'm doing the show on the way back. And when I finish, Amy Trask calls me. Amy is the former president of the Oakland Raiders. And she was the financial and legal side of Al Davis when he had the Raiders. And you see her now. She's on CBS on the pre-game show. And she was like, Mike, you are unique for this reason. You were able to cover a guy you've known since your youth. Y'all didn't go to school together. You went to Central, he went to South, but y'all have known each other all those years. And you watched him win a national championship and covered it. How many people got their hand up in the air and say, oh, I grew up with Nick Saban. I remember when we were in high school together. I remember when we, maybe went somewhere and tipped the glass. You don't hear that, right?
No. And
so she said, you and Bobby are unique in that manner. And, it made you feel, man, this is unbelievable. This is a guy from on the bayou. And now, he's winning the national championship. And, you knew the challenge was ahead because easily with that type of success. And I see it in a lot of other businesses. And I see it even in the media world. You get a little bit of success, goes to your head a little bit, and you don't work as hard. You sort of lose that eye of the tiger, and it comes apart for you. And, it did for Babay. He'll coach again, somewhere. That I'm convinced of. I've talked to him way too much to say his coaching career ended at LSU. Maybe his head coaching career, but he'll coach again somewhere. If it'll be at Miami or Notre Dame or USC, who knows? But, man, it's just been crazy to think that guy. And I had a neighbor that was pre-Ed Ogeron. He lived about 3 houses from me, Shane Sellers. And a little bitty dude, man. I don't know if we weighed 100 pounds when we were growing up. He's a couple years younger than me. And I remember first time I ever got on a horse was with him and his brother. And we had that pasture right alongside. We rode the horses, and they were original horse whisperers. And Shane goes on to become, in the 80s and 90s, one of the greatest jockeys in the world. And I'll never forget when he told me, Mike, I'm moving. I said, where are you moving to? He said, to the big city. I said, what big city? He said, Erath. I said, Erath? Man, you blink your eyes, you out of Erath. Man, Matthews is every bit as big as Erath. No, that's not what my dad said. Okay. So he tells me later, hey, Mike, Erath's not a big city. No kidding. You ain't breaking me no hard news there. So I grew up with a guy who ends up being one of the greatest jockeys in the world. And now he's a horse trainer, and he trains these horses. The first time he told me, I'm training these horses how to walk. I'm like, train a horse how to walk? He said, no, walk a certain way. He said, they got a lot of people from the Middle East that come here, and they have these horses and teach them how to walk a certain way and everything else. And I'm like, whoa, wow, that's pretty good to teach a horse how to walk. He's like, no, Mike, it's a lot harder than you might think. I get you. But to think that those guys, Bobby, myself, that we were able to make it in different junkets, different ways of the world, to, make it in life. Put it to you this way, when we were all 17, none of us thought that would happen. None of us.
To continue on, Coach, I remember running into you right before he was named coach, and I asked you, like, what do you think is going to happen? And you had kind of given me some insight, but from that moment on, how was the ride, through the national championship and even through when he parted ways at LSU? How was that ride for you and your experience watching all that happen, watching all that go down to a guy you've known most of your life?
Wow. His press conference when he first got it, and him starting to talk about his dad. And, here's this double tough guy. And believe me, if you won't be in a fight, you better be on his side, because you're going to walk away from that fight. Sort of choke up with emotion about, his dad. And Mr. Babay had the good seat in the house. He was watching. And to see him struggle early on, and he took a lot of criticism. And, that game against Notre Dame was brutal to watch. And you would figure, the guy that somehow, some way pulled that game out is now the new head coach at LSU, and Brian Kelly. 2019 was special. And it all started, I remember we at Nichols at the Manning Passing Academy. And I got to know Joe a little bit. And so he's at, we at Manning, and he's doing all these interviews. And so when he walks away, I grab him to do the interview with him for HTV. And so before we start, he's like, how long is this going to last? Because he always called me, Coach, how long is this going to last? I said, just 7 to 8 minutes. Oh, okay. He said, because I think I got to go. I think I got to be somewhere at a certain time. Well, he said, well, the hell with it. Whatever you want to do. He said, I got time for you, Coach. I said, okay. And so I said, I ended it with, you said that LSU is going to average 42 to 45 points a game this year. It was almost his Joe Namath. I guarantee it, we're going to win. And he's like, yeah, so why are you asking the question? I said, no. What LSU are you playing for? And he's like, what do you mean? I said, basketball or football? And he gave me kind of his own version of a chuckle. And he said, no, y'all, none of y'all believe it, but we're going to do it. He said, I'm just telling you, we're going to do it. Just the way he said it, you had a feeling he knew something He had it. And the final day of Manning on the Sunday, they just have the morning practice. I meet up with his dad, Mr. Jimmy. And, typical Joe. Joe comes off the field, meets his dad and everything. And he's like, Coach, I'm going to see you during the practices, okay? I said, good. I said, how'd it go over here at Manning? Yeah, it went okay. I know one thing. I said, what's that? I'm the best. I'm going to clean it up. I'm the best dude out on that field. And I'm like, okay. This was Joe Burrow before Joe Burrow.
Right.
And to watch him in that Texas game, because they're going to lose it, if he doesn't make the play to Justin. And you see that guy, and he's hanging in the pocket, and all of a sudden you see Jefferson cross that field, and he hangs it to him, and he's popped. That guy pops him in the mouth. And he comes off that field and he gives everybody that Longhorn sign, and then he flips it down to him, So, man, that was just Joe being Joe. He's one of the most competitive guys I have ever seen in my life. I mean, you talking about competitive. He was competitive. And, sometimes Coach O would kind of get mouthy to him, and sometimes, he'd fling it right back just as mouthy. So it was great to see that. They cannot take away 2019. It's maybe the greatest college football season ever. But, just how quickly it came apart. Mm-hmm. And we had to talk about it a couple months that I told him just be careful, because you can get, not necessarily maybe you, but from a team standpoint, you can get complacent. Man, this is easy. And it wasn't. And it makes you really think about just how good of a coach Nick Saban is, to always be in the ring. Might not win it all, but he's in the ring. And, I wish it had lasted longer. I wish you'd have had more wins. But 2019, I think for everybody for the next 40 years, they'll always talk about, man, that was some season, wasn't it? That 2019 season. And I think when LSU wins it again, it will be a similar deal. It will come out of the blue, and you will have a quarterback take you there, because I think that was a big part of, nothing against Miles or anyone else who played quarterback. If it was TJ, if it was Max, they're not in that area code of Joe. Joe was the leader. He put everything on his back. And they'd always tell me, hey, sometimes I'd come into the locker room, man, I'm ready to chew him out. And, man, I could hear his voice. And I'm like, man, who's hollering at the team? And it's Joe. Man, I ain't got to tell him nothing no more, And so you understood Joe was special, and until you find it. And he had this speech. We went to the governor's prayer breakfast, and, man, it is pouring down rain. They got lightning and thunder all over the place in Baton Rouge. So we meet kind of behind the kind of curtain. The guy come get me and said, listen, Coach wants. I said, what, Coach? I didn't even know he was going to be there. I went there for Thibodeau Regional. And all of a sudden, he said, listen, Coach O wants to talk to you. I didn't know he was going to be here. I said, so what you doing here? Oh, make an opening speech. I said, okay. Oh, boy, all of a sudden, man, a crack of thunder. And, man, we could hear the lightning and everything else. And he was like, I don't think God's too crazy about us being in the same place over here. and he ends the speech as, man, I thank God every day that he gave me the chance to be the head coach of LSU. And I say, God, I'm asking for one more favor. Send me the next Joe Burrow. And, man, the place, erupted, and he walked away. And so, I think he knew it too. Man, Joe was the guy in those moments. And I think, Saints fans are finding out you can be good, but you appreciate number 9. You appreciate Drew.
Yep. Mike, I think for us, and kind of segueing into the next part, I wanted to mention, for us on the Bayou, it was surreal watching the coverage of the national championship game in 2019, watching LaRose be the star of the show heading into it, watching Coco, Bebe's mom, and seeing this area of the country highlighted on a national scale. Like you said, no matter what happened after that, they can never take that away. That was just an awesome moment, really on par with the Saints winning the Super Bowl, watching those two moments for us on the Bayou.
Yeah, and it's a crazy thing. I forget what I'd called him for, and I just left a message, and he calls me back, "Hey, guess what?" I said, "What? Man, 60 Minutes, come and doing a piece on me." I said, "What you did wrong?" "Mike Wallace is dead. Ain't got nothing to do with that." "No, they coming." But he said, here's the other part. They're going to LaRose. They're going to go and interview Coco. I was like, okay, I'll get you on that part. But, and he had fun with it, and, he enjoyed the ride. And I think even talking to Sean after the Saints won in 2009, and afterwards, he was like, "I wish I'd enjoyed the ride a little bit more." And John Madden had the best line about, maybe for a year, they ought to give you parades and you sit behind, the vet and you wave. Because he said, it's a short stint. You win, and they can't take that away from you. But now, can you do it again? And so we live in that society today. What you did last year don't mean nothing. You got to win it again. I think about Tom Brady. And a lot of people don't know this. Tom used to train in New Orleans. He trained for years with Tom Shaw out in Metairie. And his dad would come there. We'd sit in the stands. And his dad and I would talk. And Tom looked older then than he does today, which is unbelievable, but it's true. And Tom was all about living in the moment. And he always kind of had that comment that, I live in the moment. And because he said, it's a short ride. And I know what happened after the season. And I do think there was some friction with him and Bruce Arians. I don't think there's any doubt of that. But it's okay to say, I'm going to stay home, be with the kids and the wife and all. And then after a couple of 3 weeks, it's like, wait a minute. I'm not hurt. I know I can still play. He comes off one of the greatest seasons he's ever had. Man, I'm playing again. I'm playing again. Or like Bobby would say, man, what? If I was Brady, they'd have to rip their jersey off me. There's no way I'm giving that up and I ain't hurt. So being an athlete and being a coach and being in that arena with those guys, that feeling you never have again. That you bonded, for that moment. And it's tough to duplicate. Yeah, you can go make $30 or $40 million as an announcer, but you don't have the same connection to those people that you're working with than you did that were in that locker room, coaching staff, players. Because, listen, it's hard, the NFL, because I have, I could play for that. Oh, yeah? Well, how come you ain't playing? Well, I hurt my knee. You don't think any of these guys got hurt in high school? Come on. It's a brutal sport. A brutal sport. That was worse during games years ago because they sort of just let it be. And the NFL kind of threw gas on the flame of the violence of the league. They sold the league on violence. Now, all of a sudden, we don't even remember the 60s and 70s. Or the 50s or the 40s. We don't even remember that. They're trying to protect the player, but they're protecting their product because what sells? Stars sell.
You've kind of talked to us a little bit about your experience with Bobby, and and I know that's ongoing. And just like with Coach O and the national title, I think that's what's endearing for people in this area. While it's a great show, we get the connection when Bobby's up there talking about the Galjors and the Danosses and all the people that he played with back in the day. It gives us that local connection. And having two guys from Lafourche Parish be the star of one of the biggest radio shows in the state it is key for us. But let's rewind a little bit to right before that, your experience with Buddy D.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in on that. To think, like, WWL is the third biggest radio station in America. And you reach 14.5 million people every day. Okay, this is nothing against any other radio station. You're not in that arena, and something you say there, even though we unscripted, because that's the first thing people say. How much of this is scripted? Script. Bobby comes in at 2 minutes to 4. I'm there early, but he's, come on, we don't script anything. We might say, hey, listen, I'm going to talk about this today, and okay, I get it. And then we just roll with it. It's interesting. You like a Air Force fighter pilot. You're just trying to dodge the bullets every day and trying to get in a word edgewise. But like both of us like to talk, so it's all good. No, Diliberto, he was special to me because I grew up watching him on ABC, and he was the sports anchor, and watching from the press box. And then, man, that was must-watch TV on a Monday, right before Monday Night Football. And then he goes Channel 6, and then he gets himself in trouble, as usual, and he gets fired. And then he sits out a year, and he goes to Sports Talk. And I had been doing Sports Talk before then, and he calls me, Mike, listen, I just got hired at WWL full-time. I'm going to lean on you a little bit more. I said, okay, but man, 3 hours. How the hell am I going to do 3 hours of Sports Talk? And I was like, just tell them stories that you tell everybody else. And he made it must-listen-to radio. As good as Hap was, and Bruce and Larry Matson, he took that thing to another level. His personality took over. And I tell this to people all the time. Man, you got all kind of stories about Bobby, I bet you could tell. Okay, if you had these old encyclopedias years ago, Encyclopedia Britannica, and you had them on the wall, I could do probably A to G with A-Bear. Maybe A to G. With Diliberto, I'm all the way from A to Z. Every day was an adventure with him. And he became like a second dad to me in a lot of ways.
You had quite the age gap.
And we had a big age gap. I was in my 30s. He's in his 70s. And so, he looked at me almost like little brother. And so, but one thing, like my dad, he would never call me if we were on vacation unless something really bad happened. He would never get in touch with me late at night unless it was something out of the ordinary. Diliberto, it didn't matter, And so the couple of crazy stories with Buddy. He called me every morning at around 7:00, and he'd go to mass, and and mass is short early in the morning, and so he'd call me and, hey, look, what you think about the game tonight between Utah and Air Force? And, and so he always had that goal sheet. He'd get that thing in the mail, and, dude, that was like prize. Almost like they had a guy with a gun guarding that goal sheet the entire time. And he'd bring his dog to mass, not in the church, but in the car. The dog would wait in the car. He'd roll down the windows. One time the dog jumped out of the car, and he had to chase it down the neutral ground to go get it. So this time, I can hear the priest pass by me, and he was like, oh, Mr. Diliberto. He says, can I help you with anything? Oh, no, Father. That's the station calling me. I got to do a show. Bob Del Giorno wants me to be on for a few minutes. So I'm going to do the show from here, and that way I don't have to get in my car and do it. And so, okay, buddy. He says, you take your time, no problem. And so I said, buddy, why you want to lie to the priest? He said, Mike, why you think I come to mass every morning? And one of the craziest things that I could actually tell was that he hated practice. So 2,000 now, Saints are practicing at Nichols. So out of the blue, he calls me, hey, I'm coming to the practice sessions today. And I thought something was sort of fishy. Him wanting to come to practice? He never wanted to come to practice. Too hot. I don't learn nothing from no damn practice. Oh, okay. So we get there. He gets there, and he parks. They have a big sign, do not park here, Acadian Ambulance. Sure enough, that's where the car parked at. I said, dude, you're not supposed to park right there. That's for the Acadian Ambulance. He says, okay, where's the ambulance? I said, I don't know. He says, okay, they want it moved. They just got to, they'll tow it or whatever. I don't care. So he said, listen, no, I'm not staying here long. I said, what you mean? He said, no, come with me. We're going to the OTB, which was right down the road. I said, what's going on? He said, I got a hot tip on a horse. I said, a tip on a horse? He said, yeah. Man, I'm starting to think about it. Man, this is like August. Where are they racing a horse race at? But, I didn't question him too much. He said, hey, I'll get you a few dollars, man. We're gonna clean up here. All of a sudden, the Saints assistant coach there comes there and says, man, Diliberto, what happened? Somebody lost a bet and you come here to practice? No. And so he started telling me, he said, listen, got a hot tip on a horse. We're going to the OTB. We're going to bet, Mike and I. And so he says, man, buddy, okay. He says, listen, I don't have the money right now, but he says, man, could you spot me 500? Oh, yeah, don't worry about it. So you want 500 on a horse? Yeah, okay. I'm going to give it to Mike tomorrow. He ain't left. And another assistant coach comes here and is like, wait a minute. Man, Buddy Diliberto, you here at practice? Yeah, we're going to the OTB. He's give him the same story. Man, give me 300 on that horse. I got, okay. So he don't give me no details or nothing. We get in my car. Well, I made him move his car from the Acadian ambulance place and let him park where I was parked at. So we go to the OTB, and he gives the guy the number, I don't know if it's like 7812. We got 500, 300, what you want? So we got like $3,000 riding on this horse. And that's the first time I realized we were betting on a horse in a steeplechase race. And I'm like, wait a minute. I thought this was a horse. No, he said, steeplechase race, horse race, it's all the same. We betting on the horse. Don't worry about it. So, man, they got all the television stuff up. So he tells the guy, you're going to have to put it on 701B. And that guy takes a look at that 701B. He says, I'm just realizing, that's a steeplechase race in South Africa. But he says, okay, I'll get it on the TV. The guy he looked at me, okay, he gets it on there. You would figure that horse is the last one for the steeplechase. And I've never seen this happen other than Kramer did it on Seinfeld when he bet money on a horse. Buddy had the slips of those deals, and as the horse would do the drills and all that, he would hit it on the side. Come on. Come on. Come on. Come on. We win the damn deal. We win it. And so, man, we splitting the money. There's 2 or 3 guys behind us. And boy, Buddy's flashing the money just like Kramer. Now, Kramer almost got robbed for the money. But he's flashing the money. We won. We won. So when we walk out, we won. So, man, we start sorting out the money. He's like, okay, make sure tomorrow I get the 500 and the 300. Okay, I got it now. So we got all that money straightened out. So I don't think he'd mind me saying it. One of them was Rick Venturi. And so I give Rick his money, and he gives me the money back. And he was like, it was like 13-1, And so Rick was like, man, how the horse did? I said, he won. He said, how many lengths did he win by? I said, Rick, no lengths. Steeplechase race. I thought he was going to have a heart attack on the field. A steeplechase. Y'all got my money on a steeplechase horse. And that's one of the good ones. And we went talk in Houma one night, him and I. And when we finished, they have a tropical storm out in the Gulf. So, man, it is pouring down rain, and water's on the road in Des Allemands, okay, on the 4-lane. The water's already started to accumulate. And, buddy, he's the worst driver in the world. How we survived going places with him. Man, he would cross 4 lanes of traffic at one time. We almost got sideswiped. Like a stop sign, never stop at that. That stop sign's there. Man, Brennan, you could have made a ton of money giving tickets for this one here. I mean, he's passing through the stop signs, red lights, and man, my heart is like, oh my God. And so we go talk that night, and boy, and it's raining, but it lightens up right as we leave. And so he's like, listen, I'm not real sure how to get back, on the 4 lane to get back home. I was like, okay, just follow me. Well, he didn't see me take the turn off. He goes straight and continues down Highway 90. And I get a phone call. Hey, Mike, I think I messed up. You're going to have to come find me. I said, okay. So I turn it around, man. I go back out, and he says, I'm at this bar. I guess we in Raceland, right? I'm at this bar. And so I see his car, so I pull in. But the two doors are open. It's got a little light rain, but the bar is packed in there. And he's holding court, telling stories. I mean, he's holding court. And the doors are open, so when I walked in, everybody, hey, Mike, what's going on? Mike, listen, I got money, so keep it down. I said, what you mean? Listen, you see that rabbit over there? I said, what are you talking about? He said, that rabbit. I said, oh, okay, and I can barely see him now because it's dark. The rabbit, he said, yeah, I got money. The rabbit don't make it across the road. If do, I'm going to collect about $50, $60 off these people. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. And he was like, no. So all of a sudden, the rabbit takes 2 hops. Man, and now everybody's crowding up by the door. We got 20 people watching. And the rabbit all of a sudden takes off. And he almost makes it. He gets to 3/4, and the rabbit stopped. And because everybody's, go. And Buddy, no. All of a sudden, 18-wheeler comes. Oh. And he flipped that rabbit into, and Buddy, yes! I'm like, this is surreal. These people got money betting on a rabbit to cross, and it was a wild rabbit, you could tell. But here's the other thing. That rabbit had crossed that road before because they knew about it. And so he had somehow survived. But this one he didn't survive. But why he stopped 3/4 of the way, I got no idea. And, man, here come that 18-wheeler, and that was end of story. But it was just Diliberto's expression. Yes! Yeah, I told y'all he wasn't going to make it. Everybody, oh, man, Buddy, here's my $2. Here's my $5. Yeah, he walked out of there with $68. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. But no, Buddy bet on anything and everything. If there was 2 roaches in a room, he would bet on which roach could hit the door first. I mean, he always had money gambling on something. He enjoyed doing it. That was the love of his life. It kept him going. The last comments he made to me was a gambling comment. This was the Friday, I guess maybe 5:45 that night. And he calls me up, got a little cold. I'm not feeling too good, but I'll be better tomorrow. I went to the doctor. They gave me a shot and everything. I'll be good. I'm waiting for Peggy to come back home to cook for me. I said, okay. He said, what do you think about them Jets and the Chargers tomorrow? I was like, well, he said, I saw you on TV. I said, okay. You saw me on TV, so you know who I picked. He's like, who you say on TV don't make a difference to me. I'm talking about gambling. You which figure? He gave me a bum steer the last thing he tells me because it ended up being the Chargers ended up winning the game instead of the Jets. And, he was convinced the Jets were going to win that game. So he gave me a bum steer. And a little after, an hour later, he passes away.
Wow. And
so I get that phone call. The first phone call was Doug Mouton. Doug told me that he had heard it. And I'm like, oh, God, here we go. So we, all night on WWL, me, Emil Gaucher, Todd Manassas, Buddy Diliberto stories. It was all night. And Emil said, man, Mike, you ain't even touched on 20% of them. But Buddy was the most unique character I have ever worked with. And listen, I've worked with people at ESPN, all across the country, Fox, ESPN. Unique, he was it. But he was naturally New Orleans. He didn't know nothing about the Bayou at all. He was plumb lost. Once you got him past Metairie in New Orleans, dude, he was going pecan. But Shane was riding in a race, and so Buddy's doing a remote from the fairgrounds. So Shane goes up to him and says, hey, Buddy, Mike's here? And he's like, yeah, Mike's in the press box. He said, man, Mike come to the races? He said, well, yeah, he's the general manager here at the fairgrounds. He said, no, I'm not talking about your son, Mike Diliberto. I'm talking about Mike Detillier. He said, well, how you know Mike? He said, well, I grew up with him. He says, well, hold on. I'm going to get him on the phone. So he calls him up on a cell phone. He says, hey, I got somebody who wants to talk to you. I said, okay. So I talked to Shane for a few minutes. He was like, man, next time I come to the Bayou, I'm going to come visit. We'll go out and eat. And I said, okay, that's cool. He says, hold on, Buddy wants to talk to you before I hang up. So he gave him the phone. He said, Mike, ask him who he likes in the 7th race. I said, what do you mean? He says, no, he just rode in the 3rd race. I asked him who he likes in the 7th race. I said, okay. So he gives me back the phone. He says, Mike, what do he wants? I said, he wants to know who you like in the 7th race. He said, the 7th race? He said, I'm riding in the 3rd and the 9th race. I don't know what's going on in the 7th race. I said, just give me a horse. Doesn't matter. So Shane was like, okay. So he gives me the horse. He says, but he said, Mike, I don't know. But he said, I have ridden him before. And he's a good horse. So I tell Buddy, the horse, he says, okay, good. I'm going to get right back with you. You would figure the horse ended up finishing dead last. man, Shane, he give me a clunker. I said, no, you didn't know nothing about the 7th race. He gives you a pick, and then you're upset about it. But he was on to the 8th race and the 9th race. It was just, he was unbelievable in that. And Jim Haslett would always tell me, hey, Mike, how much money y'all got gambling this week?
It's amazing to think what he would be like today now with sports gambling being legal in Louisiana.
Well, if he wasn't dead, it would have killed him. I mean, the gambling part that he could do all this today. And he had an offshore account. And so Mark Shafisi and we worked a lot of times with him, especially at the old Casino Magic. And he had these codes. And it was... you get on the phone, hey, this is BD 17559. And, man, I can remember because I heard it so many times. And then he would have a second code. This is DB 59. And then they'd pass him through. And he'd bet Monday night, he'd bet Foreman against him, which is unbelievable. But whatever. If the line moved any little bit, he was gambling on it. And so Irvin Favre, God bless him, he passed away, Brett's dad. He did the show with us for 4 years straight. And finally one day, Irvin talked like Bum, just like Bum Phillips. I mean, if you close your eyes, you thought Bum Phillips was there. And one time he just leans into me and says, hey, he says, you know what? I've never talked to Buddy DiLiberto off the air. I was like, okay. I said, what's wrong? He said, no, he's too busy gambling. but that was Buddy, 100%, and good gracious. Sometimes I think about that 7 o'clock phone call that I don't get anymore, and it was every morning. Every morning. You'd get that call from him, and he was hot about something. And one thing with him, he had to pick a fight with somebody every day. If it was somebody at the station, somebody with the Saints, somebody with an opposing station, you name it. I mean, it was his put-em-up moment, And then once he got it out of his system, he was okay. But he had to pick a fight with somebody every day. It was sort of what lit his flame. But it was something to hear him and just to hear it. And he was so loud. Buddy had lost his hearing, and he would talk so loud. Like sometimes my kids, they were still home, or Linda would pass, and they could hear him through that phone. That's how loud he was when he would talk to you. But yeah, we had a lot of good times, and I've just been blessed to work with, people like Hap and Bruce and Larry and Buddy. He was special, and then certainly with Bobby J. They were all unique personalities, but Bobby and I both feel the same about this. That when we go on the air, we sort of representing, the people here. That some people didn't make it to be on this type outlet. Garland grew up in, he's from Hornville, and he started at Thibodeau at KTIB, think about the three of us, and, one thing with Garland, he didn't know nothing about sports, because we'd always ask him, hey, Garland, tell us about the Saints, and he'd always sort of wave you off, and then they put me with Garland to do sports stuff, and he was like, hey, Mike, don't get too elaborate with this because I don't know nothing about it. I don't know nothing about it. And then at one time, Spud was there with us. and Spud went to Nichols, and now I think he's
back in Houma. Yeah,
he's back in Houma today. So to think that all of that, we sort of representing Bayou, the River Parish for those guys, and it's a real honor. And to think we just went through the 100-year anniversary of WWL, and man, 100 years that station, and they the second oldest station in America. I mean, you like, wow.
A lot of history there. And Mike, we appreciate all the stories. We've heard some great stories since we started this, which was kind of the point of us doing this podcast. I don't know if anything's going to top the rabbit story at the Raceland Bar.
The rabbit story.
That is amazing.
The rabbit story kind of gets everybody to shriek a little bit, but you got to laugh. I remember, I forget, we were at training camp one year. And Doug Mouton was there, and Doug was like, Mike, tell Jen Hale the story about the rabbit. And you know Jen really well. And so I tell her the story, and her first deal was a gasp. And then she started to laugh. She said, I hate to laugh, but it's so funny. And I'm like, you really had to be there to see it. But the rabbit story is definitely that and the money on the steeplechase race that up until I walked into that OTB, I had no idea my money was going on a steeplechase race. But it was to see,
South Africa, no less.
In South Africa, but it was to see him with those slips. And because, Buddy Hart, he shuffled. He didn't move at that time well. Hitting that thing alongside, almost like a jockey would hit a horse. Right. It was the funniest thing. It was to watch the guy behind the counter, and his mouth is wide open, but his eyes, like the Moon Mullen eyes, he couldn't believe that, and then flashing that money. Man, he was like big time, and after that, it was great.
Mike, before we start to wrap up here, I did want to give you an opportunity to talk about what you're still doing locally. You mentioned Jen Hale. Obviously, you and her are working with Thibodeau Regional now. You do work with HTV as well, and you're a staple at the Manning Passing Academy. So talk a little bit, while you're still doing the big time on the show in WWL, you still do a lot in our community. We saw you here after the hurricane helping as well. So talk about your endeavors still here locally on the Bayou.
Yeah. I'm a spokesperson for Thibodeau Regional Medical Center along with Jen, and I've done that since I think 2013. I think Jen came about a year later. So to see what they have done in this area, despite the economics not being too well, and to see that new cancer center, and for a lot of people, Brendan, you understand it as well as a lot of people don't want to go to New Orleans. Yeah. Unless, man, I got to. I don't want to go there. Or do you go to MD Anderson? And this gives you another option. And what Greg Stock and all have done there has been great. And then for the youth, to build that wellness center. And then the phase 2 part of it, where you see these beach volleyball and the tennis and the 7-on-7 full football field and soccer fields. To see these kids playing on there. Archie got a great line about it. He said, Mike, you grew up here. I said, yeah. He said, man, we came train here mid-'70s. He said, man, I got bit by a couple of mosquitoes. I think them suckers are still alive because the size of them mosquitoes is unbelievable. But now that was all sugarcane at one time. And to see that, and very honored to be involved with that. And with the Louisiana Line Camp and also with Manning, Louisiana Line Camp, they have sessions in the morning. Kind of get together, but to see that the largest and oldest offensive line, defensive line camp in America, and we got almost 700 kids this year. No, Thibodeau ain't Tahiti in June. You got to want to be here. And then to be involved with Archie, growing up, Archie was, a sports idol of mine. Everybody's like, who's the idol? Man, it was Ali. It was Pete Maravich. It was Archie. And so Archie's always like, Mike, every time you say that, I see that white hair. And I said, man, that old man is talking about that. Yeah, I said, okay, they take that look at you too, Arch. And so, man, it's great to see in a down. And then Dr. David Elias also has his pro football camp. to see that these 3 camps are done here in the summertime in a dead period, so to speak. And economic boom is $3 to $3.5 million a year. You can't find a hotel room. Go find a place to eat on a Saturday or a Friday night for line camp or Manning and see. Everything is packed. So it's great for the area, and anything I can do to help, I'll always do that. And, think about Ida, because we had Katrina, but that wasn't a direct shot.
Right.
We caught kind of like a side swat with it. Man, to see Ida, because I was a kid for Betsy, and that was the gold standard of hurricanes when they talked about it. People here. Not anymore. Ida eclipsed that. And the crazy thing is I'm doing WWL radio, from my home during Ida. And Scoot and Tommy were like, are you crazy? And, you got a few people around you that, they didn't want to leave. And, man, I thought about it seriously that Sunday, early Sunday morning. Let's get out of here. It's up to 155-mile-an-hour winds. Let's get out. We made the decision to stay. And I had, like everybody else, I had shingle damage. I had an old shed, work shed, that was 22 by 52. And it had all kind of wood equipment, cutting equipment, everything else. It snapped the cables off of that and it anchored it into the ground like you had taken a welding torch and cut it, and it slid it across my driveway. Part of it hung onto my gutter near my den. And so I'm like, good gracious. That place not far from me, Ore's house, like a cannonball had been shot through and through the second floor of it. And come to find out, it was the pressure, so much pressure in there, it blew the window out. So I'll put it to you this way. There will be no more staying for anything close to that. For me, I was glad my 2 kids had left. One to Texas, one went to Arkansas, and the grandkids were with Kim and Jordan, and they were in Arkansas. And so, but, I think about it, man, people still suffering from it. And so my thing was just to try to get it out on the air every day and to talk about it. If it was in the morning with Tommy, if it was with Newell in the mid-morning, if it was Sports Talk with us, was to try to get it out there, because this didn't happen to New Orleans. This didn't happen to Baton Rouge, because if it had, they'd still have people there covering it. We were left to kind of be on our own, so to speak. Luckily, the local officials here really stepped up, and we saw it from Archie Chasson all the way down across the board. They were the people that had to deal with this. Okay, where are our state senators? Where was Bill Cassidy at? Or Mr. Haney, John Kennedy? Where was he at? Okay, he's in Washington, worried about re-election. They weren't here. They come take their photo op and they take off. And that's the thing that I think everybody from here should be upset about. That years ago, I do know for Betsy, we had people in office that really kind of worked to get the area back up in line as quick as they could. We got people today, their big thing is to get reelected from a national standpoint. Brennan, I don't know how you feel about it, but it's the most disappointing thing to see how they just sort of let our area, Terrebonne, Laplace, kind of, okay, y'all on your own. We can't help you. But they give billions of dollars to countries that, if you didn't give them money, they would turn on you in a second. And some of them turn on you even before, after they got the money in their pockets. That's the thing of not trying to help your own people. And to see the infrastructure here, what's involved with oil and gas, and, with like a guy like Dean Blanchard, what 15% of the seafood sold in America comes from his place. Okay, all got sort of messed up for a long time, and people out of work because, their places get damaged. And it's like they don't care from a national standpoint. But I'll guarantee you, had that storm hit New Orleans, they'd have people there now still covering it. Yeah. For us, they just let us be. Now, I'm not talking from my standpoint. I'm talking about from people, especially in the lower part of Terrebonne, Intercoastal, on south. Good gracious, because I warned Bobby when he went there. I had been here twice, and we had worked together for a deal with the World War II Museum, you and I. And I told him, well, listen, when you cross the Intercoastal, get yourself ready, because it's like a bomb blew up there. And he called me. He's like, Mike, you couldn't have described it any better. That's what it looks like. When are they going to get national or federal help? I said, when? Man, come on. I don't think you're going to get much of it. They sort of let it be. And we saw Archie, him and Gordy and everybody, they pleading for help. And it was, okay, you don't matter to a certain extent. You don't matter. But you matter when now all of a sudden you might matter more because that gas price is almost $5 a gallon. Go buy seafood today and see how much it's jumped up. Okay? But it is the most disappointing thing that I have seen of how national officials have left South Louisiana be on its own. And we're resilient people here, but instead of all this money going overseas to countries that really don't have our best interests, they're not trying to help people that are paying their taxes, they're working every day and busting their butts. And it's really a frustration part with me. And Bobby and I were able to get that out on WWL, and we get so many comments about it, and that means more to me than anything I've done in sports. Anything I've ever done. I've won, almost 60 awards. I think my grandkids, they take it out the box and they dump it on the floor because I got it in boxes. They jumping on it and they're playing almost like cards with it. Okay, none of that really means anything because if I win something, an award, my thing is, okay, yeah, I'm glad I won, but I'm for the next deal. Man, I'm not worried about some little trophy or some award or anything else. That don't mean crap to me. My quality of work is today, but I think for us to be able to do that and continue to do that has been the high point for me in being on the radio.
Mike, I think, from my standpoint and what I do, I'm used to it, so to speak. I'm used to people, we get the attention. In my world, you have a 24-hour news cycle, and you're used to it. In this format, I do get to give my opinion a little bit, but in my professional life, I'm mostly with information and facts. So, it is frustrating, but I think that's why you see the local officials, for the most part, we all recognize that, and we go into any game plan with the idea that maybe the cavalry might show up at some point, but ultimately,
that cavalry, I can't even hear the horses. If I don't see them or hear them, I know they're a long way off. But it does go to show people when you get to vote. Yeah, when you go vote for a senator or Congress or president, that does matter. But really what matters is when you vote for people locally. Because, you might be lucky and you might get away from these type of events, but there's a good chance you're going to catch one. And then these are the people you rely on. And police department, volunteer fire departments, people that work in the ambulance business, because I think where we didn't have any deaths because of the storm, what did it create for the medical world that people kind of traumatic later on, and what am I going to do to rebuild my house, I got, $100,000 worth of damage, and my insurance company want to give me $55,000, and that's the other scam of the bunch too, the insurance part. And so, I think you hear the frustration that if this were a different part of the world, if you were in the big city, you wouldn't be getting, you would be getting the help that you needed. I'll put it to you that way. I think that it's obvious that we've now been put way in the back of the bus.
And if you drive, we're recording this show in our studio in La Rose, but if you drive further down the bayou, the more further you drive down the bayou, you can see evidence of that still. Mike, I mean, we can't thank you enough for coming on. Before we let you go, we do have a round of questions that we ask every guest.
Okay.
You can give us a short answer or a direct answer, or feel free to explain it. So, are you ready? Here we go. First of all, what's your go-to order at a down the bayou restaurant?
Oh, fried shrimp. I'll leave it at that. I love shrimp, but man, fried shrimp for me.
It's a staple for sure. What's your favorite Cajun word or phrase and its meaning?
Ooh, wow.
Now you're around Bobby J a lot, so
yeah, but he don't know how to talk French. He knows how to talk a few words.
Right.
No, Coach O, he can talk it fluid. I mean, Coach O could have a long conversation with somebody who talk fluent French, Cajun French. Is something my grandpa would always tell me because, my grandpa, he was a sugarcane farmer, cattle guy, and every time you'd go see him, it was, hey, comment ça va? Comment ça va, bug? Comment ça va? And so if you meet somebody from the bayou, I say it, and it's almost like it's triggered in my mind because he said it to me so many times.
How's it going? And ultimately, I'm glad you meant that. We've never had somebody mention that yet. Favorite snowball flavor?
Grape for me.
Grape. Okay, we haven't had that flavor either, I don't think. We've already heard your answer to the next one. Next hurricane, staying or leaving. It sounds like
hell no. It's a bad one. I'm gone. No, we have made that decision. We ain't staying.
All right, and the final one is, and it's the hot topic right now: jambalaya or pastalaya?
Wow. That's a good one because I've eaten good and bad on both.
Right.
But you know what? I'm going to go with the jambalaya. It's maybe because I'm a little bit older, but I'm going to go with the jambalaya. Man, my mom, she made some good. My wife can cook now. You can tell by my width. She can cook pretty good. But, jambalaya for me. But I've eaten good and bad on both. Sometimes I think they try to do too much with both of them. You go somewhere and it's sort of this fancy dance stuff. Man, what? Man, don't give me that. Give me that old style. That's all good for me. But I'll go with the jambalaya.
Mike, how can people follow you online? How can they listen to you?
At Mike Detillier on Twitter. Same thing on Facebook. On WWL radio, and they post thousands of things. And with all the shows I do, you ain't got to put on too many radio and TV stations. I ain't on one of them somewhere across the world. So, and one of the things we did, we've actually had this taped, be it for NFL Films or be on the NFL Network. Greg Cosell and I, we kind of a two-part series on what has made the SEC so dominant over the last 20 years. And he was like, Mike, I'm going to hand you the baton. Run with Louisiana, brother. Run with Louisiana. So he always said Louisiana. Man, if we had more time, I could tell you a story about that Louisiana. But I don't think we got time to say it. But it's how the Saints got here. And Alan Ellender, who was the representative from Terrebonne Parish and really one of the most powerful people in Congress at that time. And they passed this bill, and it was really a quid pro quo deal. That's how the Saints got the franchise. It was actually a deal. You get the antitrust laws, exempted the NFL, and we get your NFL franchise. That's how it happened. So it passed through a committee, and the gentleman who ran it was the longest-serving tenured representative from the state of New York. But he'd always say, Louisiana, like that. And, man, he was totally against it, didn't want anything to do with the bill. And so all of a sudden, it gets passed. Hale Boggs, Russell Long, puts it on a presidential aid bill, and it gets passed. Because at that time, LBJ, when he said pass it, you passed it. And so that Democrat, he had to vote for it, even though he didn't like it. And so they have a big function. And Alan would cook a jambalaya for everybody. They'd fry shrimp and crab, everything, soft shell crabs, everything else. So he comes walk in, the representative. And so Ellender was, "Oh, Mr. Representative, it's great to see you. Oh, but what are you going to do to tell all those constituents in New York about how these two dumb guys from Louisiana pulled the wool over your eyes and we got that bill passed?" He said, "Well, put it to you this way, that's the least of your problems." Now, he's telling them this is 1966. He's like, maybe you can go back and tell all them constituents about the most famous politician from New York. You know, the guy that was born in Massachusetts and's got a home in Hickory Hills, Virginia. Maybe you can go back and tell him how Bobby Kennedy is the most popular politician in New York. And people close to Ellen said, "Man, that representative from New York was so hot. He walked out of there and never talked to Ellender again in his life because he had got on him." But that's how he would say, "Louisiana." And man, that burned Allen from one end to the other up. And Russell Long, he would tell that story, but Cokie Roberts, whose dad was Hale Boggs, told me this story. She said, "I was there, and I thought I would have to break up a fight because Ellender was hollering it at him. Louisiana kicked your you-know-what. And we got an NFL team now, boy. Now go tell all them people in New York about Bobby Kennedy." And, man, that was it. And so that's the Louisiana story. And Cokie Roberts, God bless her, she was a terrific lady, great reporter. And she told me the story that her dad, she said, "I was at the party, and my dad said, you know what, we better get security." Because they could have a fight go on with this.
Mike, I can't thank you enough. I'm sure we could probably do an entire season and hear stories from you. We really appreciate you sharing.
Thanks so much, Brendan. Always my pleasure, buddy.
Thank you, man. That'll do it for this episode of the DTB Podcast. Thanks to our producer, Ross Jawbaugh, our executive producers, Jeray Gyro, Hillary Crum, and the rest of the Bless Your Heart nonprofit board members, Luke Newman and Chris Brantley. Be sure to follow and subscribe to the DTB Podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also get more content by following us on Facebook, as well as Twitter and TikTok at the DTB Podcast. I'm Brendan Mathern. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
And as Babe say, you went to that school up north, Central Lafourche High School.